All right, well, welcome everybody to the February edition of to come together, share some ideas. I'm joined by my colleagues, Cy Lynch, Ken Kabula, and Hugh McManus, and we'll be sharing some thoughts on general market conditions and try to talk about a couple stocks along the way. But again, we do this on a monthly basis. This month happens to be our red carpet edition in honor of the Academy Awards, which I believe happened Sunday night. And we did say this was a formal black tie event, so you can see McManus showed up in his green tux, and that's Cy's answer to a black tie occasion. And he doesn't think you can get any more dressed up than being honored by the Braves, and I think I have to agree with him. He's actually standing on home plate at Atlanta Braves Stadium in that photo. But so we're going to spend some time. We'll sprinkle in a couple of the little golden statues along the way. But let's, for those of you that have been here before, you kind of know the drill. But for those of you that are brand new to this, welcome. Sit back, enjoy. We do. As we did the sound checks just a few minutes ago, we encourage participation. As with any awards, Academy Awards presentation or anything else, we're a little worried about time, but we'll start the orchestra up and all that kind of stuff whenever necessary. Here's our agenda for today. Again, I'll just have some opening remarks. We'll take a look at our scoreboard, how we've done. As Ken said, we've been doing this since mid-last summer. Hugh McManus is going to share some overall thoughts on the big picture in the marketplace today. We actually don't have a challenge. No stock within the existing portfolio right now qualifies for an automatic challenge. So, and none of the four of us have actually brought an active challenge. So we'll go from there. Cy will then cover CSCO. My stock for today is HWKN, ticker symbol HWKN, and Ken will close up the stocks with ResMed, stock that has been something of a community favorite and followed fairly closely, especially for those of us who like to sleep. So, and after that, depending on how much time we have left and whether the orchestra is playing or not, we'll do as many questions and answers as you guys see fit. All right, here's our reminder for the lawyers. We are going to talk about actual stocks, actual analysis and opinions and all that kind of stuff. But the thing you need to take away is that no investment recommendation is intended. This is for educational purposes only. So please understand that. I know everybody here does. Okay, just a reminder what we're here for. Again, it is for the engagement and fun and just to share ideas and that sort of thing. But make no mistake, we do take the roundtable seriously. We are out there trying to build a portfolio that will, collectively achieve a long-term relative return of 5%. And when we talk about a stock, we're generally talking about a stock that's got a pretty favorable outlook in the way that we subject stocks to either fundamental or technical analysis. I'll jump straight into our scoreboard and how we're doing today. As we often experience in our community of investing, sometimes it takes a while for things to germinate, and we simply make the point that it's too early to even keep score. We've been doing this since last July, and you can see that some have performed better than others, but every stock selection that we make is published. As we mentioned before, Dan Hornick will actually publish the individual stock report selections on our Facebook page and in the Manifest forum, so you have access to those. But just to take you through what this chart shows, it's early. The very top one there was Hugh's first selection of Eli Lilly back on July 30th, and you can see at the very top there, let me grab my marker here, in case I want to draw your attention to anything. And he picked Eli Lilly back in July 2010, and the price that you see here, this $34.18, that's not the price on that day. That is the dividend impacted or split adjusted price. So we do account for the impact of dividends, and with most of Mr. McManus' stocks, his average cost drifts down as the dividends come in. So we do keep track of the impact of dividends in what we do. So the price today, that should be yesterday's close, $34.09. The stock is down slightly on a total return basis since July 2010. That is during a period when the stock market itself has been pretty hot. I mean, it's advanced 21.4%. So for any stock, we're always gauging how our selection does versus the market over the same period of time, and that's what we call our relative return. It's literally the total return that we achieve in the selection minus the market return for comparison purposes. And you can see in this case, down a little bit, but that's nothing to even be concerned about. You can see the second selection there was Stryker, and that is actually up 14.8% on a relative basis. There is one position there that's highlighted. That was our position in Strayer Education that we got cold feet on December 30th, and we're kind of glad we did, because it actually bounced down to, I believe, 115 shortly thereafter. But again, what matters is the longer-term perspective. Down here, what we would really like to experience is about 60% or better on this. And some of the stuff has been, we're being impacted by Abbott Labs and CSCO right now, but again, it's early. No, the overall totals, this is the number that we want to see, again, over the long term, add up to plus 5%. And we have no reason to believe that we can't achieve that. It ain't easy, but there's no reason to believe that we can't achieve that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand out the first golden statue to me. The highest relative return on that preceding chart was Walgreens. Go ahead. Where's the abuse?
Where's Price Waterhouse when you need them, you know?
I know.
Now we know what the real security violation was.
Yeah, we know we're listening to the King's Speech for sure.
Okay. So the first one does go to me, and I want to thank my family, my children, my grandmother who first took me to Walgreens, 40 years ago, and all that people. But most of all, I want to give a shout out to a very special group of people, the Challenge Club. And because I made the motion to buy some Walgreens for the Challenge Club back in August 2010. You can see right here. Here it is. And I was actually inspired to make this selection for the roundtable because I was savagely and viciously voted down about 80% to 20%. And we did not add Walgreens to the Challenge Club. You guys out there, you know who you are. We tease a little bit, say we know who you are too. But I just wanted to make the point that this is a little bit of setup for what Hugh is going to cover in the big picture, because what I think I witnessed back in that, again, it's too early to say whether I'm right or wrong. We all know that, we accept that, but back in mid-August last year, everybody was really down on Walgreens. And, it's almost like a very powerful emotion of a disappointed investor. And to me, I think that's where opportunities can live sometimes. When you have a stock that is really emotionally beaten down, it's disappointed or whatever, but you can look to a company that really seems to have some pretty decent fundamentals, even though they might have, believe it or not, management and operational challenges going forward. You know what? They're always going to have those people. They're always going to have challenges. It's a matter of how companies deal with challenges. And that's my speech, and the orchestra's playing, so we'll move on. Here's a look at the portfolio. Dashboard style, you can see that it's from top to bottom by largest holding to smallest holding within this tracking portfolio. Abbott Labs and Bank of America and BioReference Labs are repeat selections, so there's actually $2,000 invested into each one of those. In fact, I think Abbott is a 3-time selection, so $3,000 invested into Abbott. We simply do this to track, on a dollar basis, how the recommendations are done. So, for example, we were just talking about Walgreens. That's a one-time selection. $1,000 invested in Walgreens back in August is now worth $1,488, almost $1,500. And obviously down at the other end of the screen, Strayer Education has not performed quite as well, but it's actually up quite nicely in the last week or so. But again, this portfolio is published, this dashboard is published, and you can access it anytime. So again, one of the reasons you're not hearing the challenge, there's no projected returns in this column right here that are low enough in the judgment of any of the four of us to merit a return, and I don't think any one of us is aware of any material challenge that would need to be brought to any of these companies right now. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone. I'm going to hug my golden statue and pass the microphone over to Hugh McManus, and he's going to lead us for a few minutes in what's going on today.
Well, thank you, Mark, and congratulations on your Oscar. I hope you remember to take the price off it. Yeah, so that's it's a good segue because one of the things I've learned, through NAIC/Better Investing, Manifest, etc., is that our instincts when it comes to buying often don't do us any favor, and it's often a question of reprogramming what you think is right. You know what I mean? Because your gut is always telling you to run away when Walgreens hits its 52-week low, and to go and look for something, something that looks, quote unquote, a little bit safer. And I'd often wondered why that's the case, and I really think that I've cracked it, and I think that it has got something to do with where we are today as a species. Tongue-in-cheek, of course, but I'll chat about that in a second. But the thing that really seems to be pushing us around right now is anything to do with oil, and it's been the case since, I guess, we all learned that powerful group controlled most of the oil supply back in 1973. And oil it's a very interesting thing to study, and it's a very interesting thing to look at, because we in the US consume, I believe the figure is about 140 billion gallons of gasoline every year. And that means, quite honestly, that if the price of gasoline goes up by just 1 cent, that translates into $1.4 billion. And the big thing about oil, or gasoline for that matter, is that it's very price inelastic. And I always say, look at airlines when you try to figure out what elastic or inelastic means. Airlines have to keep buying oil regardless of what the price is, because they have a fixed schedule to maintain. And so when the price of oil shoots up, they're still buying it at the higher price, flying around the country as they would, but their margins decline as a result. We're kind of the same way. We have certain driving habits, etc., heating habits, and we don't really change those dramatically depending upon the price of oil. Now, oil has never jumped $5 at the gas pump in a day or anything like that. That might introduce a bit of a shock. But it goes up slowly but gradually, or it goes down slowly but gradually, and our habits don't change. So every time it goes up a penny, and that will suck $1.4 billion out of the economy. And that's part of the reason I think that Wall Street reacts so dramatically when there are price shifts in oil, because they realize that there's a ripple effect right throughout the economy, and they have to figure out what kind of companies it would impact. So that's the other reason that oil dominates the headlines, and it's kind of sad what's happening in Libya right now, but you always worry that things could get worse there when you've got a nut job in charge, and that could shake things up in the next week in the market, but we'll wait and see if that happens. And there's always a joke that oil's in the wrong places. It's in the places where you have the most angry, anti-American or anti-Western or whatever you want to take it rulers. Who knows if that's true? There is oil in Norway, and I jokingly say here there's oil in England. It's actually in Scotland, but you have to admit that the oil tends to flow south in the UK.
Go Scotland.
Yeah, but oil really dominates the scene. And market data uncertainty. Now, we as long-term investors have to teach ourselves not to sweat that. If something bad happens and a stock price plummets, the fundamentals of the company still look sound, it's a good buy. The price is just other people's opinions of what that company's worth. And the fact is, you can actually go through many, many decades of data and show that most investors tend to get it wrong. I often wonder, why is that the case? But when the markets start to gyrate all over the place, that gives us an advantage. We can buy when things are cheap, and when they're way overpriced, where we can be tempted to sell if people really want to buy a company at a PE ratio of 100 plus. Eventually we have to be good and offer them that company at the ridiculous exorbitant price that they demand. But I thought of why we do what we do kind of from an evolutionary perspective, because a lot of these instincts that we have, presumably we have them for a good reason, and we have them so that we can survive. And there's a couple of things about us that sets us apart from animals or other animals. I mean, we sleep a lot. We have huge brains. I don't know if we use them all the time, but we have big brains, and they consume a lot of energy, and we need to rest. And we need to rest for a very long time. We need to rest for about 8 hours, 9 hours a day. The other thing is that if you look at a dog, or you look at other mammals, a cow or whatever, Well, when they give birth to their quote-unquote kids, those kids are independent pretty quickly. Yeah, in some cases within weeks, but certainly in others within months. And of course, you could argue that humans really aren't independent. They can't function on their own till maybe 10 or 11. But frankly, all of the socializing skills that we have to develop, and I'll talk about those in a moment, they don't really kick in till we're in our 20s. A lot of our growth doesn't end until we're in our 20s. And when I was talking to some wag about this later, I was telling, we're really dependent on our parents till we're in our late teens to 20s. And she said back to me and said, you should meet my kids. They're in their 40s. Mm-hmm. But that's a fact. As a species, we tend to hang around with our folks for a very, very long time. And if I go on to the next slide, I'll show you something that's interesting. We hunt during the day. And that's kind of bizarre for creatures, but we developed a great mechanism of keeping ourselves cool. Perspiration or sweating, however you want to phrase it. That allows us, we're not fast runners, but we're very persistent runners. As you can see from the marathon, people can keep going for 26 miles. And we can actually get out there and go and hunt meat, other animals, in the middle of the day when the sun's at its height. And all of the other hunters are sleeping because they spend their time hunting at night. Of course, that puts us in a bad position because, yeah, we can get food and exhaust other animals during the day. They can't survive in the heat like we can. But the bad thing is, here we are, an animal that needs 8 hours sleep at night, so we're forced to get into groups because we need somebody awake, or more than one person awake, to help us survive. That forces us to be social animals, and because we have to live in tight groups, it really forces us to kind of adopt groupthink. We have to read other people's faces, determine their emotions, figure out what they want and what they don't want. We don't want to upset, quote-unquote, the tribe. And so we're geared, I think, as a species, to really respond not to what we want often, but what other people are doing. And we react to things that are bizarre and uncharacteristic in strange ways. So if we hear a strange noise around the campfire and look out into the darkness, our assumption always is that it's bad. And that's a good assumption if your life depends upon it. But of course, when you're investing in the market, just because something weird or out of the norm happens doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. And if we go on to the next slide, well, very often we used to get a great payday. Here's a scene of hunters out chasing down a mammoth. I mean, when we're kind of a nomadic people as well, historically, we would go into a new valley and look for new food and get all excited if we see an equivalent of an orchard that hasn't been tapped yet. Hey, there's a very interesting instinct we have, and that is we have this desire to eat fat. A mammoth there, that maybe that's an elephant, I don't know, that's on the bad end of a spear, is a good source of this magical food called fat that took us a long, long time to get. It was very uncommon. It was very difficult as for a hunt down a good source of this food. And so when we got it, we rejoiced. And in fact, we're actually programmed as a species to go out looking for fat. We just revel in the stuff. Of course, that doesn't do us any good today when you can walk down to your local Kroger's or supermarket and get all of the bad food that you want. But not millions, but hundreds of thousands of years ago, that instinct was a very good thing. So it turns out, as we move on to the next slide, that...
I did want to point out before we move on to the next slide, Hugh, that no animals were harmed in the making of this presentation.
That's true. This is a Hollywood mammoth. That our bias, our fundamental operating system, is designed to allow us to survive. It's not designed to allow us to be good investors. And in fact, our instincts hurt us when it comes to the market. When we see oil gushing out into the Gulf, maybe I'm skipping ahead, but when we see oil gushing out into the Gulf, we panic. We are hardwired to think what is the worst of worst possible scenarios. We're not hardwired to think it through and try to figure out what is the most realistic scenario from this disaster that's happening in the Gulf. I talked about our craving for fat is a very, very good example of how our long-term instincts that help us survive, because fat's a perfectly good food, actually don't really suit us today and actually make us kind of put on a few extra pounds. But as I jokingly say, I'm not going to start talking about arena again in this talk. So if we jump forward to 300 years, I was joking with Mark about this a few weeks ago, and that is that If Star Trek is true, then I predict that in 200 or 300 years, you are going to see planet Earth as the ultimate retirement homes for people like Spock, for people from this planet Vulcan, where everyone thinks incredibly logically and without emotion at all. They would love our stock market. They would simply love it, and they would be sitting in their houses in Florida, Phoenix, or whatever they want to retire, making huge profits at our expense. So I think if you fast forward to 200 years and you look at a Star Trek episode, it has to be the case that they're going to be retiring here, these Vulcans. And if we move on to the next slide, I think that all tells you that you need more Spock and less Kirk. I like the way this is colored in. We have to think logically, dispassionately. We can't really go with our fundamental instincts because they're actually programmed for something else, and they're not programmed to help us in the market. In fact, they don't really work in the market that well. Thinking like Spock would help us. Okay? So if we go back to oil again, it's been the story for the last 30 years. It really dominates the news directly or indirectly. And as I said earlier, when it's roaring into the Gulf, as it was with the BP oil spill last summer, there was a tremendous opportunity to buy BP when it was cheap. Now, there were very, very good arguments for saying that BP was in serious trouble and that the company might go away completely. But I think if you thought it through, you could realize that, well, first of all, the damage is seldom as bad as the media portrays. The media is often not a good source of true information about what is likely to happen, because I cynically say news media is really there to sell advertising space. If you studied how oil spills happen in other parts of the world, you see they do get kind of cleaned up pretty quickly. And yes, there certainly was risk in buying a company like BP when it was at a decade or 15-year low, but in that case, it actually paid off. The stock jumped back up from $26, $27. It's now, I think, at 48 or thereabouts. And fingers crossed, I hope it doesn't happen, but I often wondered a couple of things when Colonel Gaddafi, jokingly says, got his name, I think that's the correct spelling of his name.
Well, there's 8 different versions.
But when he announces that he's going to blow up the oil fields, and immediately there's a big rush to get foreigners out of there pretty quickly on ferries, as opposed to airplanes or shipping them across to a safer airport, I just wonder that if he does go nuts, if he does have these chemical weapons, and let's hope that he doesn't do anything silly, well, there's going to be some kind of a response. There has to be. But again, there's uncertainty there one way or the other, and I think we are going to still see oil prices increase. When oil prices increase, people on their laptops on Wall Street and their computers will be calculating what does $1.4 billion for every penny in gas price increase mean to the overall economy, which companies is it going to affect, and they'll bid the price of those stocks down. Could be an opportunity, or is an opportunity right now for us. I see Cisco's up in the batting order too, but it is an opportunity for us to watch these companies carefully, those that are going to be impacted directly or indirectly by an oil price increase, and think, well, maybe now is the time to buy. But the key is to keep a level head when those around us are telling us to go crazy. I think I covered all of that. Yeah, the investing in BP when it was all done. The kind of companies that do get hit will be airlines, for sure, things like that. But the fact of the matter is that it'll be anyone that depends on FedEx, on UPS, anyone that really depends directly or indirectly on the price of gasoline will get whacked if oil price shoots up back to $150. I don't think it's going to do that. Fingers crossed the whole thing will have a happy end in the Middle East, but you just never know. Couldn't have predicted 2 months ago what we're seeing today. And then we'll move on. Oh, lovely graphic. So if things go crazy, stay calm. I mean, it is an investing opportunity in disguise very often, and really it's not that well disguised. It's a question of figuring out what your gut instinct is there for and realizing it's not an aid to investing. And 52-week lows, I love it when that happens. I start looking at those companies to see if it's a solid company that's getting pummeled for no good reason other than the current environment, which is always kind of transient. And then the one take-home lesson I want to say for every investor is you need more Spock and less Kirk.